Good. Shalom and welcome. This thundering voice in the sky. So, the goal of the class, as stated many, many times, is a practical way to use information in Parsha for the sake of walking out, God willing, from the program and applying it directly and immediately and effectively into your life. So, what I wanted to do with this particular Parsha, this section itself of the Torah, is in many ways one of the most enigmatic and strange sections in the Torah, because some of the commandments are so far out there in terms of a logical understanding of them that is, to use the quote that our sages say, it begs commentary. It begs us to say and explore, why is it like this, what is it doing, and how do we use it? So let's go right into it. To start, we are currently moving through the month of Elul. We're currently on the road, thank God, toward Rosh Hashanah and a pleasant and sweet and blessed new year. So everything between now and then pertains to a hachana, a preparation for the new year. So everything here we're going to learn can be applied into the month of Elul, into your experiences as we move toward a good and profitable Rosh Hashanah. Let's start with the English. We're talking today about the commandment called the bird's nest. Who does not know what the bird's nest is? Oh, good. Okay, excellent. Let's just go ahead and read it. We'll read it in English, then we'll get to all the incredible nuances embedded in the Hebrew. So it says like this: if a bird's nest happens to be before you on the road, or any tree or on the ground, young birds or eggs, and the mother is roosting on the young birds or the eggs, you shall not take the mother with the young. You shall surely send away the mother and take the young for yourself, so that it will be good for you and you will prolong your days. So one more time. A Jew is walking down the street, the road, the tree, and happens to stumble upon a bird's nest. Anybody actually have that experience at some point? Okay. You stumble upon the bird's nest, and you happen to see one of the more beautiful pictures of nature. The mother on the young, being a mother, being warming, supportive, nurturing, and loving. And the Torah of kindness, Torah chesed al lishonah, like it says in Mishlei in Proverbs, a Torah of kindness, says to us, in all seriousness, drive away the mother, and you take the young, meaning the eggs and the birds, for you. And explain further the commentaries. And if the mother comes back again and again and again, what are you supposed to do? Drive the mother away each and every time. Now, I don't know about you, but in terms of the ranking of acts of cruelty on a natural level, this seems to be one of the more apparent ones. How does the Torah, who's tapped in so deeply to the idea of mercy and love, command us to take an innocent mother, innocent young, innocent eggs, and separate them? Would you do this to a human being? It's like an unthinkable thing. Short of an abuse case, you could never even conceptualize walking into a place, seeing a mother with the young who's pregnant. And you walk on in there and you take everything away from her. You drive her away and you take them to yourself. So if that makes no sense, kal v'chomer in the natural world. Add to that the teaching of our sages. One who shows mercy to God's creatures is deserving of mercy. So there's a great stira, a great contradiction in terms of what's being said here. How do we rationalize this teaching with the avoda, with the service? It doesn't ring right. It feels morally reprehensible. So if I were to explain to you, and I'll say this very short, one of the most discussed commandments in the whole Torah, 613 commandments, one of the most discussed ideas in the Zohar, in the Tikkunei Zohar, and in the Kitvei Arizal is this: the bird's nest. Lecture after lecture after lecture after lecture, deeper and deeper and deeper. So this is not just simply a subtle commandment about if you happen to do something. Everything hinted here touches into the architecture of creation itself. If you understand this even at one level of the infinite levels of meaning, you understand why we're here, what we're doing here, and what the end result is of the labor we each have to go through. Sound good? Okay, let's get into it. We got to now delve a little bit deeper. Tonight is going to be, by necessity, a much deeper presentation because we're dealing now with very deep subjects. So we're not going to be traversing shallow water. We're diving in deep. Not too deep. It'll be still accessible to the intellect, as Chassidus is meant to be, but this will not be your standard introduction to Kabbalah idea. This will go into the heart of Kabbalah itself, and short of sitting and learning it word by word from the original sources, we're going to make Yoram very happy and make sure he walks out of here like the Kohen he is, inspired to feel this for the next couple of days. Good? Excellent. Here we go. And Devorah Leah as well. So let's start with the beginning. Let's talk about creation. Now we all know that one of the most important hallmarks of theology is choice, right? I mean, every theology on the earth, Western Judeo theology, Asian, etc., all of these different systems are predicated on the idea that you have a choice. And what is the most basic choice that we have?
Either right or wrong.
Right or wrong, good or evil, moral, immoral, right? Body or soul, heaven or earth, all those dualities exist within us. We're asked, this is directly in Torah itself, I've set before you a path, to paraphrase, of life and death, good and evil, choose life, which is good. Choose it. It doesn't say just do it because you have it by your instincts. This you have to choose. You must choose this. So here's the question. Where does choice come from? The animals don't have it. They have a modicum of choice in terms of how to go about survivalist instinct. You take an animal, the animal's going to choose based upon its programming how to do things. But moral choice, abstract choice, is unique to the human experience. Human beings have, very noticeably, from all the books and things that we've written, all the things that we practice, we don't just have simply survival instinct, we have a code, a moral code. And we have these debates all the time, good and evil, godly versus the opposite. It's clear in us, it's not just simply survival. It's philosophical. It's bigger than that. It's bigger than immediate need. So where does bechira, where does choice come from? So now we start taking the plunge. Here we go. In order to allow for choice, good and evil, you have to have an underlying principle of what good and evil are. What is good and what is evil? We can lock it down to a simple idea. What is the good and what is the bad? The good, as our sages teach us, is completion, shlemut. When something is complete, it means all of its different aspects are interlocking, connected, and connect, not just in their own way, but to each other's way as well. It's perfectly blended, perfectly composed. So a complete world, a good world, means a world functioning according to its divine purpose. There's a divine purpose and there's the world. In Mashiach's time, shlemut, completion, means everything is able to show openly, transparently, the godliness at the root of its existence. It's no longer hidden. It's no longer unobtrusive or concealed. It's a revealed thing that touches each part of you. Okay, that's good. So what is the bad? If good is wholeness, shlemut, what is the opposite? What is bad? Fracture, brokenness. So Kabbalah tells us, this is found in the Arizal's Eitz Chaim, called the Tree of Life. It's one of the deepest writings that we have about the spiritual architecture of our universe and all universes. But how does creation allow us the choice? Because before this world, there was another world. in the language of, this is a very, very famous book that goes back pre-Zohar, Sefer Tamuna. Rabbi Nehunia ben Hakana, the author of Ana B'Koach, wrote a famous composition called Sefer Tamuna. It's called in that world First Shemitah, the first Shemitah. In the language of the Arizal, we call it Olam HaTohu, the world of chaos. What is the world of chaos? In a nutshell, it's a deliberately broken world, meaning it was composed to be broken. It was made in such a way that it would break. Not because mistakes were made in the system, deliberate brokenness with one purpose in mind. That we have a choice about whether to go toward the brokenness or go toward the wholeness. So this world called Olam HaTohu, in the Zohar, it's called Olam HaNikudim, the world of points. Now think about what points are. We had a board over here. If I put different points next to each other, but there's no line of continuity between them, what you have are, let's say, 10 points that don't connect. And they could be that close to each other, very near in proximity. If there's no line of connection, they're independent. They're autonomous, alone. That concept is the world of Tohu. Now the Arizal teaches, this is where we have to go a little bit more shallow than all the way to the depth, but it's important, without getting too wordy in his original language, that when we speak about brokenness, says the Ari, Ela hakelim, only vessels broke. Ha'orot, histalik lamala, they went above, but in these broken vessels, there are nitzotzot. There are sparks that are part of that fallen construct that are intermixed with the brokenness of the vessels. So there's three levels. There's the original world where lights and vessels were together, but the vessels were too weak to contain the lights, for all kinds of reasons outlined there. Phase 2, they break. And the brokenness then spiritually descends. Phase 3 is, even though it descends, it's not without its potential. There are sparks of light inside that we need to fix. So according to the Ari, the whole goal of the Torah is but one goal: to find these vessels, sift them, elevate their sparks, rectify their structure, and then bring in a whole new era. But this is the avoda from the world of Tohu all the way to the present. So we are currently in the world now. We're trying to reassemble broken vessels, elevate any sparks hiding underneath, and restore what's been lost. That's the avoda of man. Now let's make that actually logical. What does it actually mean? Broken vessels, sparks inside, lights go up. Let's start with this. If I say something is broken, if I take, for example, in my perfect bi-5 drink here, this is excellent for the living example. If I take a bottle, in this case composed of plastic, and I say to you, if there's nothing in here, I'm going to give you the bottle, and I want you to go, like a water carrier, go to the fountain, go to the well, fill up this with actual water, and come back and give it to me. Now you look at it, and from the first examination, oh, it looks great. It's cylindrical, it has a good top, and it's fine. It'll carry the water. You walk over to the well, you immerse the actual vessel into the well, you pull it up, and right away there's a hole somewhere here, and the water goes like this. And you go, uh-oh, not really containing. Okay, so you put a finger on it, like one of these movies with the dam that's breaking, and a finger toe goes in. You put a finger on it to stop the water. And then from the other side, another stream pops out. You try 2 fingers. And eventually, it no longer, because of all the water popping out of it, can function for what it was intended for. What was this intended for? To contain something. Now, what's the exact thing this is meant to do? Hold what's inside. Do we agree? Yes. In this is the meat, the drink, the juice. If the bottle cannot contain it, then no matter how good the bottle looks from a cursory perspective, it's called broken. So broken, says the Maggid of Mezrich, the student and successor of the Baal Shem Tov, is when something is meant to do something, no matter how it looks, but it cannot perform the function for which it was made. And it could be aesthetically very pleasing. It could have all kinds of things to it. If it cannot do what it's supposed to do, it's called, according to Torah, broken. Shavira. It exists in brokenness. Now, step 2. When we talk about our brokenness, where does brokenness lie? So according to Kabbalah, the world of Tohu, Olam HaNikudim, broke. The Kalim fell below. We have broken parts and we have sparks inside. What is the brokenness in us? This is a bottle. This is pretty easy, it's rudimentary as an example. But in terms of the human condition, where are we broken? Where's the brokenness in us?
In our soul.
Okay. Which one?
The neshama that's connected to the
Okay, beautiful. The Arizal comes and says, and the Balatanya quotes this as well, when you come into this world, your divine soul is perfect. You are not coming here at all for the purpose of cleaning any part of your neshama. What's called your nefesh elokit, your divine self, is a perfect portion of godliness itself, and therefore doesn't require cleaning, doesn't require sifting, no repair needed whatsoever. It's a perfect divine expression. In the 2nd chapter of the book of Tanya, it's called Chelek Eloka Mima'al Mamash, quoting the book of Iyov in chapter 31, Pasuk Aleph. So, here we are. Your divine soul, perfect. Your spiritual divine wiring, that consciousness, perfect. All right, so that contradicts what we just said, right? So it's not that soul. Where's the brokenness? Lower. Where? In the heart. In the heart. In particular, we know, according to the Torah itself, this is even in the book called Divrei Hayamim, in the book of Chronicles, Ketuvim, we say every time if there was an ark here, you pull the Torah out, we say, Lecha Hashem, HaGedola, v'HaGevura, v'HaTiferet, v'HaNetzach v'Yahod, Ki Chol b'Shamayim v'Haaretz. To you, God, is the kindness, the might, the beauty, the Netzach is Nitzachon, victory, the splendor, and the next words hint at 2 more called foundation and kingship. These 7 called in Kabbalah the 7 traits of the heart. They're called classically Sheva Sfirot HaBinyan, the 7 traits that build. So parenthetically, if you look at the Torah, how many days of creation do we have? 7, right? 6 days, world's made. What's on the 7th day? Shabbat. God rests. However, comes Rashi quoting the sages and says, not pure rest. What was brought into the world as a result of the introduction of Shabbat? Menucha, peace, tranquility. So even God's resting has a creation that's involved. Why do we have 7 days? Why not 8 or 10 or 20? Why 7? So the Ramban, quoting this, Rabbeinu Bechaya, Vilna Gaon, and many others explains, these 7 days are each a reflection and manifestation of these 7 qualities. These 7 character things that we're talking about, these traits, are the spiritual underpinning to each one of those days. So as an example, creation of day 1, what is it? Okay, day 1. Right, that's verse 1. Go 2 more verses to verse 3. Let there be light. The first time, Vayomer Elohim is light. Why? That's the day of kindness. Without getting any further, kindness. Light and kindness are connected. Day 2, what's made? Yehi rakia b'toch hamayim, vayhi mavdil ben mayim l'mayim. Let there be a firmament in the heavens to divide between the waters. Division. That's the side of the 2nd trait, gevura, an act of splitting, breaking. Okay? Day 3, 2 things happen. The water is pulled to one side, It's limited in its expansion, and the land appears. You have tiferet, the combination of both an act of kindness and an act of rigor. So if you study this deeply, each one of the 7 traits is the underpinning of creation. So now comes the big question. Okay, but we said that in us, they're broken. They're broken traits, right? So going back to the cup, let's pretend for one moment this is called kindness, the first of the 7, chesed, and it's broken. What is an example of broken kindness? A kindness according to the Maggid of Mezrich and Or Torah that does not function according to its divine purpose. What is broken kindness? Is there such a thing?
Yeah.
What is it?
It's a kindness that's not shlichut, that's not perfect.
Do you have an example? What's a broken kindness?
It's like you receive an oreach, but you give him a sour face. You do let him in.
Okay, so the inappropriate use of it. How about this? How about when the Zohar criticizes Avraham Avinu, Abraham, for taking his nephew Lot with him, saying that Abraham, we know, is the vehicle of kindness. The fact he took with him a wicked person, the Zohar says, misplaced kindness. Too kind. Abraham, you're wonderful, you're loving, but too kind. You need a little bit more selectivity in who you bring with you. Now what about Isaac? How about Yitzhak Avinu? Right? Isaac, we know, without getting too deep into this, is emuna pshuta, lamala min geder almin. He's so faithful that his entire existence is above the world. Literally, completely and utterly separate from it. So, what's the big test involving Isaac that happens? The 10th trial of Abraham is called what? The binding of Isaac. Ever wonder why it's the binding of Isaac? Kabbalah teaches because the nature of him is to be so high above, he couldn't move except with divine permission. It was a level of experience where the world meant nothing to him. He was a transcendent soul. That's taught at length by Rabbi Isaac of Hamelin. So here we go. Comes Abraham and he binds him to the altar. He binds that transcendent, broken Gevurah downward to rectify that trait. So if you go through the entire narrative, part by part, person by person, what you'll discover is all of these traits have to be identified and fixed in different ways. The Talmud comes in Pesachim and says, not like Abraham from whom Yishmael came, not like Isaac from whom Esav came, but only like Yaakov, Jacob, Mita Shlema, a perfect bed. So Abraham and Isaac, as tzaddikim as they were, represent a bit of an extreme where there was a waste product to their trait. Yishmael being the fallen manifestation of kindness, and Esau becoming the fallen manifestation of Gevurah. So, we have the 7, it's creation, and it's us. We have it. So, if this is a broken kindness, and I am aware, as an example, I tend to give to people too much. I'm not really conscious of the measure of their deserving to be given. I always give abundantly. There's no kav hamida. There's no sense of how much, when, and what the appropriate way is. Here's a very simple idea. Think of the very excited 17-year-old in the secular world who wants to go on a date. And for the first time, the girl responds and likes him. I use him because my background. So, girl responds favorably. He gets so excited at the prospect of having a girlfriend, he begins calling every hour. Now, the intention is great. Connection, let's go. But if it's a flood, what effect does it have? It'll actually be more like the opposite, Gevurah. It'll fracture the relationship. So misplaced kindness for the 16-year-old is, he gave too much. It's always so much. There's never a sense of, if I'm going to be kind or be outgiving, or an outpouring, how do I do it? What is the criteria? What is the measurement? Let's take the opposite. Gevurah. Strict teacher. Teacher's too strict. Every single time somebody makes a mistake, criticize. and criticize, and no love at all. No sense of being relaxed and being at all. It's all about being critical. What often happens to the student if critical becomes what they're used to on a 24-hour basis? Gone. They'll leave school and never come back. They'll graduate and never want to learn anything because in their head it was always about strict, too much. So Kabbalah teaches to rectify this condition we have to have what's called hitkalalut. Says the Arizal, hitkalalut is fundamental to all truth. You want to fix something? Blend it. You have to blend it. So kindness can't exist without a measure of gevura, and gevura can't exist without a measure of kindness. We have to fix all of these traits. So if I know within myself I have a brokenness to me, I have a bottle, as it were, that doesn't function according to the intention of being a godly instrument, I have to identify it and fix it and work on it. To say it short. Let's take it one more step. Okay, so we have these traits, and they're broken, they're fallen. They're initially bad expressions. We said before that the divine soul is not the problem. This problem exists in one domain, called Nefesh HaBahamit, animal soul. Divine soul, everybody knows. You know intuitively your connection. The animal soul, that's where we get into precarious and often difficult waters. That's the part of us that can be pulled the wrong directions. So in a nutshell, the task of creation, according to Kabbalah, is the divine soul situated in the brain has to identify the brokenness of the heart, establish a plan or a criteria for, it's like a doctor, make a diagnostic plan, identify the problem, and then implement the strategy for convalescence, to fix. And so according to the Arizal, this is a famous teaching in Eitz Chaim, brokenness only exists in the heart. In the deepest aspects of consciousness itself of the brain, Eino Shavira. There is no brokenness. No brokenness. So if I were you, I would say to me, okay, wait a second. So the brain is clear, the heart is not. But what about all the negative thoughts that take place in the head that often drive this passion of the heart the wrong direction? How do we justify or explain that? Comes the Alter Rebbe and says, in many places, this is different. When a person has a refined mind, when they really use the mind properly, here's what happens. The mind makes a plan, and because of the plan, the heart becomes aroused. The heart then capitulates after the mind. The mind is the driver, the heart is the vehicle, it's the machine following. But if it happens like this, where the heart starts, you have an emotion about something, and then the thoughts begin. It begins with the emotion, and it ends with perturbing thoughts. The wrong kinds of thoughts? This is not really thought. What this is, he says, is the steam rising out of the cauldron of the heart, agitating the mind. He even shows that the word the heart, halev, is actually a combination of various letters. Halev can be lahav. What does lahav mean? A flame. Then it becomes hevel. What is hevel? Steam, like vapor, like it's a hevel. And then it becomes bahel, which refers to confusion or scatteredness. So the sequencing means if it starts in the heart and there's a very strong emotion, it produces something analogous to steam coming out of a pot. And what happens is that even a famous halacha we have in the Shulchan Aruch, if you hold a glass pot over, a lid, over the actual pot, and the steam comes up, what happens to the actual lid? It steams, right? You see it. So what happens? The heart gets going, the mind is not in control, the movement up of vapor then agitates the lid of the mind. And now the mind is having negative thoughts, yes, but not because the mind is broken, because the heart has conquered the head. The whole system reversed itself. But if it starts here, and the mind is clear and decisive, a centered, focused mind, the heart will say, I submit. Moach sholet al halev, in the language of Tanya. The brain rules over the heart. Just to note one thing, that statement of the Alter Rebbe, Moach Sholet al Halev, is gematria, the numerical value. So Hebrew letters also have corresponding numbers to them. The value of that verse, 541, equals Israel. So Israel actually is the power of the mind to control the heart, as opposed to lower levels of consciousness. The mind is the servant of the heart, not the master. So, to fix the problem with the 7 traits, we have to have 2 things. Number 1, a sense of the mission. And number 2, powerful mind that's centered and focused, that controls the passion of the heart, directing the animal the right way. Now, it's important to make mention, famous question by the Alter Rebbe in Torah Or, the prophet Ezekiel, Yecheskel, describes as part of the vision how animals are lifting up the divine throne. There's an aryeh, a lion. There's a shore, an ox. There's an eagle, a nesher. And these are prophetic visions, and they're lifting up God's throne. The question asked the Alter Rebbe is, how do non-kosher animals have any association with lifting up God's throne? The lion isn't kosher, the shore isn't kosher, and the eagle's not kosher. They're explicitly not kosher in Torah. So what are they doing in the prophet's vision of lifting up God's throne? Says the Alter Rebbe, to teach you, if you know how to control the animal inside, this power of the heart, this broken heart, you can even lift God's throne higher. These are not inherently bad, but they have to be disciplined and focused properly. So let's go a little bit deeper now. So again, the system. 7 broken traits. Shavira midot halev, in the heart. The mind, according to the Arizal, not broken, pure. If the inner dimension of mind is used, it can direct the heart properly. If the heart takes over and is out of control, it steams up, taking the lid of the head, clouding it, and now he's all confused. So just a parenthetical footnote about this in the book of Tanya, when describing these 2 souls, if you go into the chapters about them, the father of the Rebbe, and Lakutei Levi Yitzchak explains, if you look at the actual discussion about the soul, what you find is for the divine soul, the Alter Rebbe begins with the mind and then goes to the heart. With the animal soul, he flips it. He starts with the heart and then talks about the head. So asks Lakutei Levi Yitzchak, why did he flip them? To teach us this lesson. If it starts with the head and goes to the heart, divine soul. If it starts with the heart and irritates the head, animal soul. Know that distinction and you're halfway there. Let's go further. These broken vessels, according to Kabbalah, are hinted to in the very 2nd verse of the Torah. We have the Torah, the beginning is Genesis. The first verse is, in the beginning God made the heavens and the earth. What's the 2nd verse? Okay, V'ha'aretz tohu v'vohu. The earth is tohu, chaos, v'vohu, and void. V'choshech al penei tahom. Darkness on the face of the abyss. Now, according to Midrashic literature, is darkness exile or redemption? What is darkness? Exile, right? It's classical. Darkness is bad, in the sense. Light is good. Light is redemption. So the Arizal teaches, if you look at the last letters of the words, darkness on the face of the abyss, V'choshech al penei tahom. The last letters is the word keli, vessels. They're broken. They appear at the last letters in the verse describing chaos and darkness. So the Torah tells us, on verse 2, before anything else is mentioned, know what the mission is. You're going into a world of brokenness, a lot of it. Even by the end of the Torah, it says, end of creation, Bara Elokim la'asot, God made everything to fix it, say the sages. It's all about fixing. First verse tells us, broken vessels exist. If you go to the very end of the Torah, the last parsha of the book of Devarim, it says like this at the end, Moshe le'enei kol Yisrael. The last words you'll read in Simchat Torah before you flip back to the beginning is Moses to the eyes of Israel. Now, the initial letters, not the end letters, the first letters, Moshe, Le'enei, Kol Yisrael, are the letters Keli. But this time, in the beginning, not the end. So according to the Ari, this is what happened. You start the Torah, broken vessels exist. They exist first in you. You have to go in, and through all the mitzvot and all the Torah, fix it. If you do the job properly, by the end of the Torah, you'll have vessels again. Not at the end of the words, in the beginning. Moshe, le'enei kol Yisrael. And that sequence actually is Malchi, my king. You fix the vessels to now connect to Hashem, connect to God. It's as simple as that. So what does the Torah do ultimately? In a mission statement is the blueprint of how to fix the brokenness, beginning with what's within and leading to what's without. That's the mission statement of Torah. It's a vessel cleanup system. We have to go in, fix these vessels through the instructions of the Torah until eventually everything is fixed according to the biocentric principle. If you fix inside, it projects to the outside. Everything becomes fixed. This is why in the Messianic era, in Mashiach's time, we learn that it's not going to be any longer a function of good and evil. Evil ceases. The impure spirit passes away forever. Why? Because if in that era we are fixed, if those 7 traits are now godly vessels, like a well-functioning cup that can fulfill their purpose, well, guess what? The projection of that to the world is a rectified world. There's no longer the antithesis that we see today. So, here's where we are so far. We've identified the mission, clean up the vessels. We've identified the fact that the brokenness exists where? Heart, animal soul. Where is the wholeness? Where is the completion? Mind, the divine soul. These two have to interact. We have to use the heart for divine purposes, thereby converting vessels that are broken to vessels that say, my king. Make it whole. All right, so now let's take it one step further. We had a question in the beginning. The bird's nest. The crazy thing about the bird's nest. What is going on with this nest? Drive away the mother, take the young. Now that we have a little bit of an underpinning as to what we're talking about in terms of the Kabbalistic view of the universe and the structure of creation itself, and now we can talk about this logically and make sense of the wording. One more thing to add to make sense of all of this is, we said that when the vessels broke, the lights are hystalic, are gone, but what remains still in those broken vessels? Sparks. What does that mean? I mean, it's there, it's not, it sparks, what's the difference? So watch this. The old question is, good and bad. Now we know according to the Torah there are certain forbidden things. There are 365 don't do's. But then we have a lot of permissible areas. Are you allowed, for example, pleasure from the world? Can you eat and drink? Yes. Is sexuality permissible? Yes. Is going on vacation permissible? Making money permissible? A lot of permissibility. It's ironic that the world is so addicted to these things when it's actually permitted by Torah. And there's a holy venue to it. So what is the difference? If it's all permissible, those things we just mentioned, they're not exactly the mitzvot, but they're allowed. They're mutar. Then how do we understand them? So now the Arizal gets very creative. Gets into a very deep idea that we'll just touch upon very at a point, but it's worthwhile. When we talk about broken vessels with sparks, he says like this: everything you encounter that's permissible exists in a state of suspended possibility. In the language of physics, it's called superposition. It's neither here nor there, it's simply a potential. It could be bad, it could be good. Bad or good. Who decides? Who's the machriya? We are. Money. Is money good? Can be. It depends upon what? Function. The Arizal used to stand up and somebody rich would walk in the room, somebody of wealth and means, and they would ask him, why do you honor somebody's materialism? He says, on the contrary, I honor the potential of what it could do, would he understand about how to mobilize money for a godly purpose. Eating and drinking. Okay, there is gluttony, yes, but does your body require some measure of caloric intake? I think so. Maybe some yogis disagree with me, but for the most part, most of humanity has to actually eat food and have drink. So if we eat, there's two ways to eat. I could eat because, the pleasure of food. Now at Yoram's house, that's where it always goes. I can't get to the higher level yet, but I'm working on it. So, short of that problem, okay, you eat the food, you take the drink, you feel good. Oh, this is wonderful. I want to have more dessert and more of that, and suddenly you're eating everything. Now the body, we know, even if it's only a one-time deal, you suffer from this. High blood sugar, you feel heavy the next day, versus, okay, I have a meal. How much do I need to have the right impact on me? That for my body, my constitution, it's enough in order that I can subsist. Not too much, not too little. I'm not lacking joy. It's just enough that I feel good about it. So, according to this principle, comes the Ari and teaches that the word table, shulchan, will either be same letters lenachash, to the snake, or lechoshen, to the breastplate of judgment of truth on the Kohen Gadol's chest. All these possibilities simply exist as potentials. By our intention, we determine it. Eating, drinking, good or bad. Making money, how do you use it? Even alcohol. There's a famous picture that decorates many Chabad houses that shows a beggar in Russia in the mud on the wall like this, and he's drinking alcohol, some kind of wine, and he's covered in mud. Okay, this is the drunkard. In the same picture, there's a wagon flying up into the heavens with a horse, showing a bunch of people in the back saying l'chaim with the same alcohol. Beautiful illustration. It's not the alcohol, it's the intentionality behind it. In a very similar sense, I was once asked by somebody in the drug rehab program, which is a great question, are hallucinogenics bad? My response was, for you, yes. For the Native American medicine man that spends 35 years in disciplined meditation to help his tribe, no. It's as simple as that. Because when you use it, you're trying to escape reality. When he uses it, he's trying to help the people that are with him and guide them toward a better tomorrow. Very different intentions. So the problem isn't with permissible things, this or that. The problem is where we take it. So that reality of combined potential, good or bad, chaos or wholeness, is called in the language of Kabbalah, klipa noga, a glowing shell. In the Torah, there's a famous description after the Garden of Eden fell and Adam and Chava were pushed out of the garden. It describes two guards stationed to prevent man's return. One are called cheruvim, and the second's called something stranger, lahat hacherev hamitapechet, a sword of an ever-turning flame. Sounds like something out of Lord of the Rings. What is that? What is that? So think of it rationally. It's a sword and a flame. It's both at once simultaneously. The Arizal comes and teaches, klipa noga. There it is. The minute Gan Eden fell, and good and evil became even further mixed together, now you have two possibilities in all permissible things. It's either going to be a sword that kills or a flame that illuminates. Either or. You decide. Likewise, klipa noga, shell and glow, means like this. Klipa is a shell. If I imagine having a big orange in my hand. Well, some can maybe eat it, but you have to first kind of do what to get to the fruit. Gotta peel it. You have the Zohar's example of a nut, and you bite into the nut. What's going to happen to your teeth? You break them. You hurt them. Crack the nut, discard the shell, there's the fruit. That is the noga, the glow. So the term klipa noga actually means, in the same thing, you have both. It's either a shell that further obstructs, conceals, or hides, or it's noga. It glows. One of the 8 synonyms in the Torah for light, noga. Okay, so they're together. We have to decide. Our intentionality will determine this or that. If, to go back to the previous model, you lead with your heart. I want the food now, and I want all of it. Okay, well, what happens then is heart conquers the brain, the brokenness conquers the sense of completion, and now you tilted the whole thing toward the shell, further perpetuating the static in the world. But if you instead say, okay, I have a passion for it, great, but I have to make a very important choice how to consume it, how to do it. If I do that, mind leads the heart, tilting Klipa Noga toward the Noga, toward the light, and now you better the world from the inside to the outside. All that makes sense? By the way, the numerical value of Klipa Noga equals good plus bad, Tov plus Ra. So that's it. When we say tree of knowledge of good and evil, you've heard that before, Eitz Da'at Tov Ra, that's exactly Klipa Noga. It's one tree, says the Ramban, and in that tree, it's either good or bad. And says the Ramban, it grows as one trunk and then splits in two different directions. That's exactly Klipa Noga. The good and the bad are together simultaneously. We have to choose what branch to grab onto. Which way do we go? And by the way, the word tree, eitz, the language of eitz also means advice. So we're taught in Kabbalah what that tree actually is the deepest sense of advice that comes from two possible sides. The good side, the divine soul, and the bad side, the animal soul that's broken. And depending upon whose advice we take will determine the outcome of which way it goes. Sword or flame, glow or shell. Absolutely. It's all about the construct. So now here we go. We defined, just to bring it all back now to the Parsha, creation in order to allow for choice, good and evil, reward and punishment, right and wrong, has to have both completion and brokenness. The event of brokenness is called Shavirat HaKeli. The vessels broke. There are sparks inside those vessels. What are the sparks? That's the glow. That's the light. The broken vessels are the shells that exist in all permissible phenomena. By the way, even mitzvot, same thing. You take a mitzvah, what if I showboat? I do them not to connect to Hashem. I do it because I want to be called Rav. I want to be called scholar. I want public recognition. So I do the mitzvah. And even though, say the sages, you should still do it. It'll take you the right way. But from the intentionality, if I'm using it the wrong way, it goes more toward the bad. If I do the same act with the right intentionality to connect, not to showcase my abilities or my knowledge, it goes toward the good side. All comes down to kavana, to intention. Now let's go back to the verse. Now the whole thing should make sense. Here we go. We'll do it in English. If a bird's nest happens to be before you on the road. The word for bird's nest here is kan sipor. The word kan is the acronym for Klipa Noga. The bird's nest is a nest of potential, as we'll explain. Why a bird at sipor? The word sipor, bird, has a whole nother side to it. According to Kabbalah, there's two kinds of birds. Who's heard of Balak? Okay, the wizard. Balak ben what? Okay, Sipor. Ben, what's that mean, son of a bird? So according to the Zohar, he used to do divination techniques by watching how birds fly, in particular the raven. So there's impure birds, and there's kosher ones. Furthermore, the word Sipor has a numerical value of 376. Okay? There we go. And that value actually is 376, two sides. 376 equals the word Esav and equals the word Shalom. Complete opposites. Esav was anything but Shalom. He was a conqueror. He was a divider. He was a villain in his fallen manifestation. So the word bird here, tzipor, hinting at all kinds of birds in the Torah, also hints at either the side of Esav or the side of Shalom, peace. And what is the root of the word peace? Shelem. What is Shelem? Shlemut. Wholeness. So now we have the following. When you will happen upon a klipa noga, a nest of a bird, with two possible outcomes, either toward Esav or toward wholeness, either the world of Tohu or the world of Tikkun. What's the verse say? It tells us, we'll keep it on the English side for right now, it'll be before you on the road, or on any tree, or on the ground. Now watch this. In Kabbalah we are taught there's two principal domains. Private domain, Reshut HaYachid. Public domain, Reshut HaRabim. Private domain is your home, your property, what you own. Private domain. That private domain, we say according to Kabbalah, is a world of perfection. If you walk into God's private domain, you are aware that everything is Him. So what part of us corresponds to the private domain? Complete, perfect awareness of God, requiring no fixing, no changing. The mind, right? The divine soul. Public domain, Reshut HaRabim. This is called the world of separation. You walk outside the door here, to the outside, to the parking lot, you go beyond, there's many vendors. To use the analogy of the Ben Ish Chai of Baghdad. You go outside, there's many things. Now here, when you walked in, you knew, Ohel Moshe. This is part of Ohel Moshe. I know shul's here, it's part of one thing. You know that. You walk outside, it's hard to know sometimes what belongs to whom. What if I'm on someone's driving spot, I pull into someone's area, I just didn't know, I didn't see it. Because in a public domain, things are confusing. That's the animal soul. According to this, again in English, if a bird's nest happens before you, where? On the road. Not in a private domain, on the road. Or any tree or on the ground. Now, the tree and ground allude to the 7 broken traits. Why? Because 6 of those traits, as taught at length in Kabbalah, the emotional traits, love, fear, mercy, as we talked about before, emotions grow. We see it in a child, they're one way, adolescent, different way, grows and grows. So traits grow like a tree. It's explicit by the second Rebbe of Chabad, the Mittler Rebbe. Emotions are analogous to plants. They grow and develop and mature. The 7th one, called speech, malchut, hints at the ground in many texts of Kabbalah. Why? Because when you speak something, when you say the thing, like a vow, or you talk to somebody, it becomes a definitive thing. Says the Alter Rebbe in Tefillat Dak and Kegavna, he says very simply, when you have a thought about somebody, it's a potential. When you feel something about somebody, it's a potential. When you say it, or you physically do something, it becomes completely locked in. You can't reverse it. It's like the ground, physical. So now we have the flow like this. When you will be moving about the road, the public domain where things are broken, and you encounter a bird's nest, a klipa noga, a potential, a bird that can go toward Esav or go toward peace. Where? In a tree, alluding to the 6 broken traits of the heart, or on the ground, on the earth, alluding to the power of speech. Again, the area of brokenness in us are these 7 traits. The mind is not. What do you do? According to this prescription, you look in the nest and you see 2 things, young birds or eggs. What's the difference between efrochim, young birds, and eggs? What is an egg compared to a young bird? It's a potential. And the young bird is? Yeah, says the Alter Rebbe, it's too immature, it can't move and fly. The wings are underdeveloped. It's still moving, it's growing. So you have 2 things. You have the eggs and you have the birds. So what does this allude to? These eggs and birds. An egg itself, says Kabbalah, is gevura, it's severity. These mean all of the sides of us that we're not permitted to do. The isurim, don't do these things. Lo ta'aseh in the Torah. The little birds with little wings that can't fly yet represent the positive things. They're already born, they're alive. Mitzvot are positive, but we have to move them a certain way. So we look at this nest, a klipa noga of a bird, either Esav or peace. We see inside 2 potentials. There are the Isurim, the forbidden things, like the eggs. Even on the Seder plate, by the way, when the Arizal positions them, he puts the egg on the side of Gevura. And we have the concept of the little birds, Efrochim, that don't fly yet. So these are the mitzvot that we have to use the right way. And it says like this: you shall not take the mother bird with the young. You shall surely send away the mother and take the young for yourselves. It'll be good for you and for the length of your days. So what does that mean? So we just said a second ago that everything has a divine potential. Our objective is to elevate the potential and discard the shell. The klipa noga is in everything. Shell and potential. If we identify the glow and pull it out, it becomes a light. If we get trapped in the animal consciousness, it becomes a shell. The idea of sending away the mother bird, taking the young to yourself, means there's two ways a Jew can serve. One is to avoid the forbidden. The second is to do what's permitted and what's encouraged. We have 248 mitzvot, do them. 365 don't do's. By taking the eggs and the young to yourself, it means you take both. You take the forbidden ones by fulfilling what to avoid, and you take the permitted ones by using them for the right intention. You take them to yourself and you drive away the mother. In Hebrew, it's a double expression of drive. It says literally in the Hebrew, shaleach tishalach. Drive away, you will drive away. A double expression, meaning one of those pertains to the good mitzvot, that by doing them properly, you elevate their sparks. The other one is the negative mitzvot. By avoiding them, you elevate them. You achieve through avoidance. And lastly, it says, if you do so, it'll become good for you and for the length of your days. We said before that the broken vessels were too weak to contain the light. Comes the Arizal and teaches, if we widen the vessels, they can contain the light. This verse simply tells us, understand that when you do the service that you're intended to do, we fix the broken vessels. We make them bigger, wider, and more capable to hold light and to shine properly. This is also why all the commandments are 613. The value of the word orot, lights. That's the purpose of the Torah, is to create light from broken things. So now we have the following, and we'll conclude with this concept. To make it practical for us on a realistic level. Every single person encounters every day two things. You encounter things that are either permitted or forbidden. That's one side. It's bad for you inherently, you avoid them. It's good for you, it's commanded by the Torah, you do them. But the other domain that we have is permissible things, eating, drinking, money, etc. Our objective must be to remember that everything bound by good, where it's encouraged to do it or it's permissible to do so, has two potentials. Either toward destruction like Esav, or toward the peace and the unity of a rectified system. What we have to do is make sure that we use, with proper intent, each thing that we encounter the right way. If we do it the right way, we achieve two levels of elevating the mother bird. Number one, we send away the bad, and we elevate the good. If we do that, every single day we remember that it's all within the choice of how we direct it. And when we encounter the kan sipor, the bird's nest, the klipa noga of two potentials, good or bad, that everything is about us deciding how to use it. If we use it the right way, it elevates. Use it the wrong way, we depreciate. We have to use both. And if we can do that, then also the term length of days alludes to Mashiach's time. The Baal Shem Tov teaches us, this is actually the first thing you read about in Keter Shem Tov, a famous elevation of soul he had, that he entered one time on a mystical elevation in Rosh Hashanah, coming up soon. He entered the Mashiach's domain called Kan Sipor, the bird's nest. So why is the Mashiach's domain called the bird's nest? And the answer is very simple. To bring Mashiach, it depends upon the bird's nest. It depends upon understanding all of these things hover in potential. If we direct it the right way, we are bringing closer and closer the idea of the ultimate bird's nest, the arrival of Mashiach, redemption of reality, and fixing of the broken vessels from Choshech al Panai to home to Moshe Lenei Kol Yisrael, redeemed, put together, and now Shlemut, whole. So that's the mission, and this is one of the deepest verses in the whole Torah, so it's a very simple understanding of a much deeper concept, but it does illustrate the point of what we're trying to accomplish. Any questions? You're on. Yeah, so there's two actual commandments that promise long life. One is the bird's nest, and the second is honoring your father and mother.
So how you explain that the father and the son, you listen to him, you look again, take the bird, you fell down and die. There's no more life. So he said that the world to come.
Right.
And Yeshua ben Rebbe saw that, he came Asher, till the chorus.
Yes.
The Rebbe says it's still a man. The man, Yosef, is a man of hell, and Yeshua ben Rebbe ben of hell. So how you explain the long life, it is died.
So long life actually refers to, even by the standard of what we talked about tonight, it's the fixing of the world itself. We're taught that when somebody, even if they pass, God forbid from our perspective, at an early time, God forbid, that when a soul elevates all of its achievements, all of the sparks that elevated with it in terms of its avoda every single day, elevate as part of that ascension. That's why it says, going into the Gemara in Barachot in the first parak, or second parak, it says, Tzadikim in the world to come don't eat or drink. They sit with their crowns in their head, and they bask in the divine presence. So the answer shortly is that even if the long life in physical terms is not achieved, but the idea of long life in terms of the spiritual side is achieved. The sparks are elevated, it contributes more to the wholeness of the world, and if the objective is to reassemble these broken vessels by our positive participation and to widen them, to make them more able to contain light, then even if one, from a linear time perspective, didn't live 100 years, 120 years, but if the avoda was true, if they fulfilled the mitzvot they're meant to do, then by definition they're widening those vessels, and that's the long life, the extended days talked about here. So it's not necessarily a physical thing, even though al pi pshat it is, but it means more of the function that through the avoda of klipa noga and tov, and through all of that, we elevate, we widen, and we draw down. Okay, we're good? Okay, everyone. Yes, sir.
What does drive away the mother?
So, okay, that's a great question. So, actually, the mother bird itself represents the power of the divine that's present in everything. And the objective of it really says send away. What it really means is everything in the physical world, by definition, is a potential. So if we leave it unrealized because we don't participate, we decide not to get involved and move it the right way, and we say, God forbid, somebody else will do it, then the mother remains near them. The mother bird in this case is the divine presence nurturing everything. So if we do it right, we lift the bird away, we put it back to its source above. So the objective is, going back to the analogy, if the vessels are broken and there's sparks inside, the notion of sending it away can allude to the idea of lifting these sparks back to their source above. So it's coming with the idea that elevation depends upon us, or, God forbid, the opposite. It can sink further down. But our objective has to be to lift things up. That's the sending away of the mother bird. Go ahead. Last question.
It seems to me that one of the other applications of it is one of the other interpretations that, like I think about having grown up on a ranch with a chicken coop, and you throw out the chickens so that they're in a different area before you take the eggs.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other eggs, they might get depressed and stop laying eggs.
Right.
But it seems to me also that the bird is potential, and that if you kill the bird too, you don't get any more eggs.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just take like the eggs and the young, that bird will keep laying eggs. But that would also apply to a fruit tree or your investments or your
Absolutely.
energy.
You mentioned right now is basically, we see Shivim Panim LaTorah, 70 faces to the Torah. Everything has multiple interpretations according to a certain level. But because that verse is so often articulated as a Kabbalistic principle of design, yeah, there's a big sod, but in terms of the many ways that can go, even, for example, if the mother's sent away because of you, it's an act of cruelty, right? It says the Vilna Gaon, we have to train ourselves to be cruel in a mitzvah way. For often we see that people, are very kind, very compassionate. When it comes to having to stand up and be strong, they can lack that quality because it's so foreign to the Jewish way to have to march in battle. Even though we've done that before, biblically, maybe even somewhat today, it's hard. So Jews have three qualities: modesty, mercy, and compassion. And we say that when somebody has all that, it can be hard to be the opposite sometimes. So all of that wraps into the same thing. So a good point. Very good. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you came, and we'll see you next time.